Welcome to Valley's Gold, a show where we explore the people and places who feed and clothe us. On this episode, we learn about the products and methods used to feed our livestock. Nutrition is an important part of any animal operation. So join me, Ryan Jacobsen, on this adventure.
Valley's Gold is produced through a partnership between the Fresno County Farm Bureau and Valley PBS. Production funding for Valley's Gold is provided by
the Myers Water Bank and Wildlife Project, an educational outreach program working to teach students about water and wildlife issues in California. Field trips are free for all schools, and each trip's curriculum is based on learning about California water resources, valley agriculture, and native wildlife.
Everyone enjoys getting together to laugh, to talk, and mostly to eat. It sounds so simple, but the reality is that it takes a lot of hard work to feed us. The next time you sit down to eat, remember to thank our farmers, Gar Tutelian Incorporated since 1949 at 800-696-6108.
Heroes come in all shapes and sizes. At Brandt, our heroes are the men and women in the field, the folks who work hard to put food on our tables. Join us in celebrating the Valley's real heroes. Brandt, professional agriculture.
You are what you eat. I'm at a dairy just outside of Kerman to learn about the science behind animal nutrition. I've been joined by nutritionist Dr. Jon Robison. Dr. Robison, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Well, you're going to be my animal food expert. How'd you ever get involved in this business?
You know, it started a long time ago when I was just a little kid. My father thought that I needed something to keep me out of mischief, and so he bought a dairy. And I was 8 years old, and my job was to raise calves on the dairy. Almost 50 years later, I'm still doing it.
And we're talking about that side of you, but you also have another side where you impacted a lot of lives when it comes to animal nutrition.
Well, I did. I had a great opportunity to teach at Fresno State University for about 18 years. And Ryan, you were one of my stalwart students there early on in that endeavor. And I had the opportunity to touch a lot of lives that way. And they touched my life as well. So.
Absolutely, and like I said, those individuals are all over the country now.
Yes.
Working in these environments.
Yeah.
And so we're here talking about animal nutrition. Your expertise really is in the bovine species.
That's correct.
So when we're talking about cows, there's one major difference of cows from most of the other animals we think about, the ruminants. What is a ruminant?
So we refer to them as ruminant animals because of the compartments of the stomach that they have. Monogastric species like humans and pigs have one compartment in that stomach, whereas the ruminant animal has 4 compartments to the stomach. And the rest of the digestive tract is very similar, but it's the 4 chambered compartments within the stomach that make a ruminant animal different from the other species of animals.
And that obviously has a lot of basis for the work you do when it comes to animal nutrition. There's a lot of complexities when it comes to the digestive system and making this all come together and work in that.
Yes, when we're putting rations and recipes together to feed ruminant animals, we're essentially balancing the nutrient supply that is going to feed 2 digestive systems within one. And so that's where our focus has to be, is maintaining health and proper function of that rumen and those 4 compartments, as well as what the animal is ultimately going to absorb through the intestinal tract as well.
When we're talking dairies here in California, obviously very complex when it comes to all the different foods they're using to feed these animals, but what's some of the main staples that really are taken advantage of?
The ruminant animal is capable of utilizing foodstuffs that are not otherwise utilizable by human consumption. And so we're able to take things like almond hulls and things like whole cottonseed, things like cottonseed hulls, and we can use beet pulp, for example, as nutrient sources for the ruminant animal because of the way they process them in that four-compartment ruminant stomach.
And obviously, you then move on to, I mean, you still have the basic necessity of alfalfa or other types of hays,
Yes.
grains of some sort. All those come together to make this perfect equation for these animals.
We build the foundation for our diets based on the forages, which includes the alfalfa, the corn silages, the wheat silages, and those types of feeds that build a solid foundation, and then we add to that with some of the byproducts that we refer to, such as the cotton seeds and those types of foodstuffs, as well as corn and energy sources beyond that.
And we talked about what you're doing proactively for the animals, but I also know you're trying to adjust for any nutritional deficiencies you may see as well.
Yeah, that's very true. So we on a daily basis are collecting information from each of the various classes and ages of livestock that we have on these facilities. And so we're monitoring that information on a continual basis, not just for the amount of performance and production we get in terms of milk or growth and those types of things, but it's very important for us to put a balanced diet in front of them, make sure that they eat that diet, make sure that they're healthy relative to that diet, and that they are performing to their genetic potential.
Yeah, I think so many people just walk around and when they see a dairy, they think it's just plain old cow chow. You put it out there and they're going to eat it. But no, one of the most important parts is you can come up with all this on paper, but if they don't eat it, they don't consume it, they're not getting those nutrients and they're not performing to your expectations.
Absolutely. It's not just as simple as sitting in front of a computer and crunching some numbers and saying, okay, this is what they're going to do. Because you can put that on paper, but if exactly like you said, if they don't eat it, it's all for naught.
Well, Dr. Robison, thank you so much for sharing this incredible information about what takes place to feed our animals.
Well, it's been my pleasure.
I'm at a farm south of Fresno to learn about alfalfa and how this crop is grown for livestock feeds. With me is grower Brett Mosekian. Brett, thanks for having me out here today.
Thanks for coming out, Ryan. Appreciate it.
I'm here to learn about alfalfa, but let me begin with, how'd you get started in the farming business?
Well, I'm a third-generation farmer. My grandfather, my father, and I, and been growing up with alfalfa our entire lives, and can't think of anything else I'd rather do than be a farmer.
That's awesome. I hear that story all the time. Folks love this industry.
Absolutely.
And I'm here to learn about alfalfa, but let's begin with the simple side of it. What is alfalfa?
Well, alfalfa is a forage crop. It's a perennial. It's harvested 6 to 8 times a year and primarily fed to dairies, cows, horses, goats.
And so when you say perennial, folks are going to see a field and they think that's something that's going to be rotated in and out, but perennial means it's going to be there for several years.
That's correct. 3 to 5 years typically, and then it will be rotated out. If in a dairy, it would go to corn or winter forage, and then back to alfalfa after a few years.
Got it. And you say a forage crop. What is forage?
It's just feed for livestock.
Got it. Okay. So alfalfa, I know, is a big staple for that, and that's the reason I'm here, is because we're learning about this incredibly important industry that really takes care of this massive livestock industry within California. So alfalfa, there's really kind of 2 ways to consume it. I know one way is more for the storage and one more is for the fresh side. So what's the difference between a green chop and then actually storing it up in the hay?
Well, green chop, they'll cut it and blow it into a truck with a chopper, put it into a bag or into a pile and feed it to the cows directly. The baled alfalfa, or the hay, we'll go through a process of drying it down, putting it into a package that's marketable, and then taking it to the dairies or to the horse ranch or wherever it needs to go. It's a longer process.
Absolutely, but there's a reason you're doing that, because that storage process will allow that to be stored for quite some time.
Absolutely, up to a year or 2 years or more actually.
Got it. So let's go through the process. It's a perennial crop. I'm assuming you start with seed when you have a field prepared, but what does it take to get to that point? What does field preparation consist of?
Well, you need to get the field prepared by opening up the ground, chiseling or ripping the ground to get the water penetration, allowing the roots to go down. You want a level field, and you go in and make the borders for the irrigation system, and then you plant the seed.
And alfalfa, I know, it needs water to grow, but is also very sensitive to the water standing within it.
That's correct, and that's why you have to level the field. Typically it's all laser level now, and you have a tail water system on the end of the field if you can to get rid of the excess water.
Got it. And when it comes to the actual then growing, you plant the seed in the ground, and how long does it take till you get that first cutting? And what time of year do you actually plant the seed?
Typically we try to plant somewhere between September and November. You can plant later in the year. You have to be careful with frost as it gets colder. And then the first cutting will come off sometime in April.
Got it.
And then go about 7 times after that.
7 times. So what's the intervals typically? I know it's probably based off of heat units and how warm it is.
Well, typically that, or about 28 to 30 days is what we shoot for. It has a lot to do with our irrigation water supply and also the quality of the feed that you produce. If you let it go too long, the quality is degraded.
You talk about quality. What are you looking for? What does that perfect alfalfa look like?
Well, it's green, it's leafy, it's fine stemmed, it's soft. For the dairy market, you're going to be analyzing the hay to find out exactly what's in it. For the horse market, it's more by appearance.
Got it. Okay. And when you say dairy side of things, are they looking at protein, carbs, and just a combination of everything?
They're looking at proteins. They're looking at the total digestible nutrients or relative quality of the feed. And they have a scoring system for that. Buyers will buy it by that scoring system. The horse market's not so interested in that. Actually, the good dairy hay is not good for the horses, so it works out well. You can go both directions as the season progresses.
So the process to harvest alfalfa hay, what does it take and what's the pieces of equipment that are used?
Okay, we start out with a swather, which cuts the hay and lays it out in a windrow. After it lays there for 3 to 5 days, we go in with a hay rake, which will take 2 of the rows of hay and we put them together into a single windrow, and we follow that with a baler once the moisture's right. Put it into a package, whatever size you want it to be. It is then picked up and stacked with a bale wagon.
Got it.
So this will take, anywhere from 5 to 7 days at times, depending upon the time of year.
And you talked about that, 7 to 8 to 9 different cuttings we may get here. That's unique to California, correct? And particularly here to the Central Valley.
California has varied terrain and varied conditions. Some areas only get 3 to 4 cuttings a year, maybe even 2. Here in the valley, we get 7 to 9 a year, which is very unique. Colorado and places like that, 3 or 4. So we have the opportunity to produce a lot more hay here, a lot more cuttings, and something nobody else in the nation can really do.
So when it comes to alfalfa, what are some of the major disease and pest pressures that you have to deal with?
Well, the big thing for us with the alfalfa is the weevils in the spring, as well as aphid. And then this time of year we get armyworms. And you can see the damage if you drive by a field. They'll have the little white tops on the hay, and that's the armyworm damage.
Got it. And those armyworms typically turn into the butterflies you may see when you're
driving
by an
alfalfa
alfalfa
field. They'll be
field.
stuck all over your windshield. The guy's got an armyworm issue.
Yeah. And Brett, final question for you. When it comes to California hay and your hay, where does it primarily end up?
The hay we grow primarily ends up at the horse market. But most of the alfalfa in California goes to the dairy market or to the beef industry. And it'll stay here in California locally. It doesn't get taken too far away. It might go from the valley to the coast, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's an expensive product to really haul too far.
It's very expensive to move. It's not a high value crop, so it makes it a little tough to move very far at all.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, Brett. This has been super informative to really learn more about this very important commodity when it comes to feedstock for livestock.
Well, thank you very much for coming out today, and hope you learned something.
Thanks so much. I'm at a farm south of Hanford to explore what it takes to grow sorghum, one of the valley's newest feed crops. I've been joined by Brian Bergman. Brian, thanks for having me out here today.
Thanks, Ryan, for coming out.
I am so excited to learn about this extraordinarily unique crop of sorghum. It's one of the more newer ones we've seen in the valley, but it's actually not necessarily new. But before we get to that, I want you to tell me a little bit about your farming operation.
Well, I'm a 5th generation farmer in California. I've been in Hanford for about 10 years with my new adventure. I farm for a network of dairymen, and over the past few years they've asked me to grow sorghum for them.
Got it. And it's not just sorghum you're growing, you grow a lot of different other kind of feed crops.
That is correct. I have all the winter wheats, barleys, I do alfalfa, and I do have some permanent crops as well.
Got it. Okay, so sorghum. You said this is one of the crops in your mixture.
Yep.
Probably on the newer side, right? How many years have you been growing sorghum?
Personally, about 7 years, but this BMR variety for about 3.
Got it. And sorghum. Why sorghum? Why do you have this in the ground?
Well, there's 2 reasons. Water, always a big issue. It's a crop that doesn't require a lot of water. It's a very good nutritional value to it as well.
Really? And when you say nutritional value, this is for ruminant animals. So specifically, this is for your dairy operations.
Yes, we use it strictly for dairy forage.
So let's just start with how do you farm sorghum?
Well, surprisingly, it's similar to corn. So it's going to be a summer crop. We do put it in rows, similar to corn. You grow it anywhere from April to September, even into October for some late harvest stuff if you want to do it as a third crop or a double crop. My ground prep is strip till. I use conservation tillage. 2 passes, I'm done, and I kind of walk away and wait for pests to come.
Yeah, it seems like a crop that is very dense. It just, as you look through here, extraordinarily thick. Is it denser plantings than you do for corn, or is it about the same?
Seed per acre, it's very similar, but this one is a lot more lush, a lot more leaf.
Yeah.
So it is good forage that way.
But a lot of sorghum, I mean, it can vary from anywhere from a couple feet in size to this
Correct.
monstrous.
A lot of the grain varieties that were designed specifically for forage, they'll be, roughly about 3 foot. This one is designed to go up to about 7 with a nice big full head.
And Brian, you talked about insect. I know insect is one of the pressures you do face out here.
Yes, unfortunately we see a little more aphid pressure with it. It's treatable, but there is an aphid issue. It's a lush, sweet plant, and that's what the pest wants to go for.
Got it. And how many days is this crop from the time you put it in the ground to the time it's harvested?
Generally about 112 to 118, also similar with the corn crop.
And Brian, when it comes to sorghum, is it found throughout the United States, or is there areas that's more conducive to growing it? It's doing very well here in the valley, it looks like.
Yes, it actually loves the valley sun. It needs heat. It's growing mostly in the southern regions of the United States. You see a lot of it in Texas, where the majority of this is actually bred in Texas. Then you get into New Mexico, Arizona, and a lot of the southern part of California.
And you talked about the water use. I mean, you can't underestimate that. This is significantly reduced on some of the water input.
Correct.
And yet you're still growing something that has some pretty decent tonnages to it.
Correct. Yeah, it's very comparable to corn in the yield for us here in this area. Granted, there's guys that get 40-ton corn. We never have. But this sorghum here will get us probably in the 23 to 24 ton on near half the water of what corn would take.
Got it. And nutritional value. Obviously, when you're talking nutrition for these animals, extraordinarily important. How does this fit into that nutrition program?
Well, it fits the fiber part of it. Also with when these heads start to develop and you get the grain developing in here, there's good starch, good protein in here as well.
Great. And you talked about these heads. What is these heads? What is it made up of, and how do you know that this crop is then ready for harvest?
Well, right now this is in the pollination stage where they're just cross-pollinating like every other crop. And then once it's germed, it'll produce a little berry-like seed.
And the one thing that it's much different than other crops that I've been used to here in the valley is that we're going through the pollination right now, but the water's been cut off to this field.
Correct.
So you're looking at some immature heads, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, you said about 3 weeks out from harvest?
Anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks on this. As the crop progresses, you can kind of tell when you should shut the water off. Otherwise, you'll get a heavy crop. You'll see some lodging. It makes it difficult for harvest.
Got it. Okay. Well, Brian, let's move on to the most important part of the year, is that's harvest.
Yep.
How do you harvest sorghum?
Well, for us, it's pretty easy. We hire a crew to come in with a lot of choppers and trucks, and they can knock out about 75, 80 acres without even trying, get up into 200 acres a day. Wow. On some of my larger, big open fields.
Got it. And it's the machinery is just literally coming through and chopping it and chewing it up and...
Chop and chew. Like I told you earlier, that I will occasionally fly a drone over the top, determine how to get the choppers in here, whether they need to either direct cut, where it feeds it into the truck directly, or we have to swath it and try to pick up everything we can.
Got it.
Because this will tend to fall over. Being that it's the BMR, there's less lignin, more digestibility in the plant, a little bit easier to fall over when they get this big.
And so from the time it enters the truck, then you're hauling it straight to the dairy to be bagged up.
Yep, we take it straight to the dairy. They ensile it in large white piles. For the viewers out there, those white piles are feed.
And one thing about this crop that I think is a little bit more on the uniquer side, but it's not even necessarily a rotational crop. You can actually plant this back to back. I mean, I know when we talk corn and other types of crops, it is a rotational crop, but this, you've been telling me that some folks have some longer history with it.
Yeah, actually I personally have a few fields that are over 5 years, year after year, also as a double crop, so I do have winter wheats in there or a barley as well.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for having me out here today. I was so excited to come learn about this relatively new crop to the valley. And I say new in the sense that we're seeing just massive plantings throughout the countryside now. And it's a crop that a decade ago you saw very little of it.
That's correct. Yeah, with the drought that we're in, you're going to see a lot more dairymen planting this because of the amount of water that it takes to produce such a good quality crop.
Well, again, thank you so much, Brian. Really loved coming out here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
I'm at a dairy farm near Fresno to learn about a livestock feed staple, silage. Silage allows products to be fed to animals year-round. With me is grower Jonathon DeGroot. Jonathon, thanks for having me out in the field today.
Thanks for joining me here on the farm.
Jonathon, tell me a little bit about this family operation.
Well, my family has been farming here in the Central Valley for 43 years. My grandfather was a Dutch immigrant from Holland, and he worked hard his whole life, and this was his dream realized, having his own dairy farm right here in Fresno.
And you guys, I'm here for a specific reason. We're at a dairy farm, but you guys grow your own feed.
That's right, we gotta feed the cows, Ryan.
The reason I'm visiting you is we have this corn behind us, but it's used for silage purposes. What is silage?
Silage is a high moisture, fermented fodder that's grown and packed in big piles and covered and fed to the cows. It happens to be the main ingredient in our mixture here at our dairy.
And when you said fed to the cows, what's unique is that you're obviously harvesting this product, and we're going to say July, August, probably into September, but it can be fed year-round because of the way that silage is able to be stored.
Absolutely. When you ferment this product and cover it in an airtight layer of plastic, you can keep it there for 2 to 3 years even.
And it's not spoiling.
Absolutely not. Not if it's done correctly.
Not if it's done correctly,
That's
exactly.
right.
Let's begin with out here in the field, we have this gorgeous corn behind us.
Yes.
What does it take to establish this crop?
Growing corn, especially here in the Central Valley, is a very unique process, and every little step of the process is important to the end product. So we start by chopping the previous crop and disking in all the stubble to put nutrients back in the ground. We'll usually follow that up by putting some cow manure on the ground to add nitrogen and phosphorus and other components of fertilizer into the dirt. We pre-irrigate so the soil has a lot of good moisture in it, and then we disc it again nice and flat and smooth because you want a flat, smooth seed bed here before you plant the corn.
Great, so we're talking about the ground, it's all ready to go at this point, and so then goes in the seed. And I know when we talk about the seed, it's important. So you're trying to get these spacings just perfect. What is the spacings and why is that so critical when it comes to corn?
Well, corn needs room to grow. As you can see, it's a rather large plant, so it needs the proper spacing. We have our tractors here set up with GPS, as well as special seed monitors with computer cords wrapped down to the planter that tell us the exact spacing that we're putting the seed in at. These seeds need to be 6.5 inches apart to give them enough room to grow. The rows are 30 inches apart. That way the water can move correctly down the rows.
And you talked about just far enough so it has room to grow, but you also want it close enough so these things aren't falling over during a major windstorm or whatever.
Absolutely. You can see the plants are holding each other up right here. These plants are going to grow up to 10 to 12 feet tall.
Wow.
And they're going to have big, heavy ears of corn on them, so they need to kind of stabilize each other when they get up to that height. You get late in the season in a good windstorm, it's all going to lodge.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how long does it take corn to grow? I mean, the old wives' tale is that you could actually hear it grow. And I know there's parts of the season where it almost seems possible because you see it growing inches a day. But it's a very fast-growing crop. But from that seed to 10 to 12 feet tall, how long does that take?
This whole process takes anywhere from 100 to 120 days, depending on what type of seed you plant.
Now, we talked about 100 to 120 days. One of the most important times in that corn cycle is when it actually tassels out. So towards the top of that growing process, we see the tassels develop, which is then actually pollinating the kernels that are so important to this whole process.
Absolutely. Without a good tasseling, you're not going to have good pollination. You're not going to have a good ear of corn on the stalk. It's very important that during that time, we have the right mite control and worm control so that the plant can be healthy at tasseling.
Moving into harvest, what does it take to harvest a silage crop?
It's quite a process. Large machinery comes in, big choppers that will actually cut the stalks off a few inches from the ground. All the leaves are chopped into small pieces, and then the kernels are actually crushed with a special roll called the processor.
And what's the moisture content you're looking in when you're harvesting?
Our target is 68% moisture.
Wow.
If it's too dry, it won't ferment correctly or pack correctly.
So you have these big trucks that are now hauling this over to the dairy facility to be put into these large plastic bags. What are these large plastic bags and how do they work?
What you do, you chop it, you truck it, and you have large tractors packing it into this very tall pile. You got to get all the air out of that pile to have it ferment correctly. Then you cover it in these big plastic bags or tarps, and you want to get all the air out. So it's got to be just the right millimeters of plastic so that no oxygen gets in. Then you cover it with tires to seal it down. It's like a giant Ziploc bag.
And so, Jonathon, when we talk about silage, where is it really grown in the United States?
Everywhere, Ryan. Corn is probably one of the most predominant crops grown here in the United States. But California is mainly silage. That's what we feed our dairy cows. We can't haul silage from the Midwest. Once you break that seal on that pile, you only have about a day or two to feed it before it starts to spoil.
Got it. Okay, so it's very, very important to feed that as quickly as possible once you break that seal.
Absolutely. You don't want the feed to sit and get hot and spoil it all for the cows.
Got it. Well, Jonathan, incredibly awesome information about silage. Again, I think it's one of those crops people go down the freeways, they go to the western side of the valley and just see all this corn and probably think it's going towards sweet corn, but the reality is a majority of it's actually going for silage, and it's an incredibly important crop for our livestock here in this state.
Absolutely, and so next time people see that corn growing on the side of the freeway, they should be thinking about milk.
That's a great idea. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for
You're
this
welcome.
great information.
Thank you.
Animal nutrition is an extremely important aspect of any livestock operation. Science and hard work come together to grow these important feeds. I hope you'll join me next time for more Valley's Gold.
Valley's Gold is produced through a partnership between the Fresno County Farm Bureau and Valley PBS. Production funding for Valley's Gold is provided by
the Myers Water Bank and Wildlife Project, an educational outreach program working to teach students about water and wildlife issues in California. Field trips are free for all schools, and each trip's curriculum is based on learning about California water resources, valley agriculture, and native wildlife.
Everyone enjoys getting together to laugh, to talk, and mostly to eat. It sounds so simple, but the reality is that it takes a lot of hard work to feed us. The next time you sit down to eat, remember to thank our farmers, Gar Tutelian Incorporated since 1949 at 800-696-6108.
Heroes come in all shapes and sizes. At Brandt, our heroes are the men and women in the field, the folks who work hard to put food on our tables. Join us in celebrating the Valley's real heroes. Brandt. Professional agriculture,